Today we will talk about post-modernist psychotherapy. When I say a post-modernist psychotherapy, what do I mean by it? I simply mean that it's a very, very different kind of psychotherapy. Most therapies concern themselves with problems, with disorders. So if I have anxiety, I go to a therapist and the therapist treats my anxiety. If I have depression, I go to the therapist and I tell them about my depression and they ask me questions about it and then they treat it. So what's so different about solution-focused brief therapy, which is a post-modernist psychotherapy? But before I tell you what is different in this psychotherapeutic approach, I need to explain the concept of problem space and solution space. So now, if you look at this diagram, you can see these two circles. And these two circles are overlapping. One has been labeled problem space, the other has been labeled solution space. The idea here is that in order to find the solution of a problem, you need to know something about the nature of the problem. But if you stay in problem space, if you only discuss what the problem is, the chances are you are never going to reach the solution. Let me give you an example to clarify my point. The problem of darkness at night is as old as civilization itself. People have tried to solve this problem through many techniques. One was, since discovery of fire, people would light lamps, they would light torches, and thereby lighten up the dark. But if we keep studying the nature of darkness, it is not going to lead us to the development of light bulb. In order to develop the light bulb, you have to leave the problem space and enter solution space. You have to look at what materials would be required. You have to look at what materials might be cheaper. You have to look at what materials would actually generate light when electricity passes through them. And all of these things have nothing to do with the nature of darkness or why darkness is there in the first place. So becoming an expert on darkness does not help us produce light. Therefore, when we enter a therapist's room, just talking about our depression is not likely to lead to happiness. And that is the basic principle behind solution-focused brief therapy. Let's do an exercise. Close your eyes and just imagine for 1 second that all your emotional problems, all your psychological problems have disappeared. Just imagine that any concerns that you have, any worries that you have about tomorrow, any depression or sadness or anxiety that you have has totally vanished. How do you feel? But an even more important question here is, what do you do? What are you doing differently now that your problems have disappeared? Do you get up at the same time in the morning? Do you make your own breakfast or somebody cooks breakfast for you? Do you eat something special now that you're not feeling anxious or depressed? Do you take a shower? Because chances are if you were depressed, you didn't want to take a shower. How do others notice the difference in you? How do they notice? How do they find out that you are not depressed anymore? Maybe you're smiling? I don't know. You tell me. So the important difference between a traditional therapeutic approach and a postmodernist therapeutic approach is that we do not discuss your problem. It's interesting because the client comes to the therapist and the client expects to talk about their problem and they say, you know, my life is really bad right now. I'm at a really difficult point in my life. Things are really bad. And the therapist says, okay, right. Okay, I will hear everything, but please, will you tell me, what do you hope to do if my therapy is successful? How will your life be different? Can we first talk about that? Can we talk about, okay, let's say through some miracle, through some magic, I fix you. All your psychological difficulties vanish. All your emotional problems vanish. Your shyness, your procrastination, your anxiety, your depression, whatever you think you have disappears. How will tomorrow be different? And the client thinks, what? Okay, so the therapist doesn't want to hear my problems. How am I going to solve them? How are they going to help me solve them? And the therapist says, well, let's try this. Let's find out. And you start to describe your behavior on the day that all your problems have vanished. And here the work of the therapist is to put in some detail there. Why is that important? I tell you why. We as human beings have a negative bias towards negative emotions and negative experiences. So for instance, in the therapy room, the client would give me details of how badly their mothers beat them up. They would say things like, my mother was so cruel, she slapped me very hard, then she kicked me in the stomach, and then she punched me in the face till I was blue. And then I would say, all right, let's talk about some happy moments. Oh yeah, we used to go every Sunday to the park. Notice the difference. The story of their physical abuse, they're giving me every detail. But when I ask them about the happy moment, they say every Sunday we used to go to this park. And I would say, can you give me one incident? Like one Sunday, what happened? Well, we used to eat ice cream. So it was always like used to. It's like many events lumped together in one whole when it's a positive feeling, when it's a positive experience, when it's a positive memory. But when it's a negative memory, it's all very, very fine details that you remember. When we're building a solution, we do the opposite. We say, all right, forget depression, forget anxiety, you are happy. How do you start your day? I get up, go to work. No. You don't just get up and go to work. You change your clothes. Are you putting on different kinds of clothes now that you're happy? Maybe you're choosing different colors? Okay. You've told me that when you were depressed, you weren't taking showers regularly. Did you take a shower this morning now that you're happy? All right. Do you greet your spouse, parents, whoever is in your home, your brothers, sisters? Do you say hello? Do they notice a difference in how you say hello? Do you hug them? Do you thank God that they're there? Is there something totally different about your behavior that they notice? How do they find out? What do you do differently? And once you put in a lot of the details, what do you have for breakfast? Who makes the breakfast? How many eggs? Is the bread toasted? Or do you just eat a regular slice? Do you put butter on it? The therapist gets the details of when you're happy rather than when you're depressed. And then the next step is for the therapist is to say, well, some of it must already be happening. And then the client says, well, yeah, some of it is already happening. I am having a healthy breakfast. As a therapist, I am not the expert on clients' problems or their solutions. The client is. I'm not an advisor. I'm not going to tell them, this is what you should do when you're happy. This is what you should do when you're not depressed. The client knows. And in a postmodernist therapy, we say that the client is the expert of their problems and client is the expert of their solutions. And we also say that client solutions may actually be the source of the current problem. And that may sound contradictory, but it makes perfect sense. The client's solution to the problem of an abusive boss is depression. Stay at home. Cover your face with a blanket. Don't leave the bed. Remember, it's a solution. What is the problem? The abusive boss. The boss who criticizes you, who condemns you, who says, you're no good, you're pathetic, you're incompetent, you buffoon. Why did I ever hire you? Right? And he insults you in front of everybody. And so your solution to that problem is depression. Stay at home, feel sad, feel upset, give the excuse of depression, don't go to work. You might end up losing your job. Not a very good solution. Client's solution is in fact the client's problem. So what we want to do is help the client discover a solution that works for them. And that solution is not going to come out of our repertoire. It is going to come out of their repertoire. So I say to them, how's today different? Says, well, I'm very excited because I've decided to update my CV. And I've decided that while I'm on leave, I'm going to send my CV to this other place where I think I have a chance of getting hired, and I hear from my friends that the boss is very nice and the pay is better too. So you realize that it is when you help the client think about the solution rather than the problem that the client is able to improve their life. There are several postmodernist therapies. Discussing them here is beyond the scope of this introductory level course. But I would encourage you to consider this very new and exciting world of postmodernist psychology.